Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this special on location edition of Live with the League. I'm your host, Emily Kalashewski, and I am excited to be here in Holland today. As a reminder, these on location editions of Live with the League began last year as part of our 125th anniversary celebration, and we've continued them as a way to highlight the incredible work happening in our member communities across Michigan. And of course, as I mentioned, we are here in Holland. Um, this city really exemplifies thoughtful placemaking, strong partnerships, and forward-looking leadership. We're excited to get into some of that today. But before we begin, I want to make sure that we go over a few quick reminders in case you have questions or comments for our incredible guests today. So again, drop your questions in the chat or in the comments, whether they're for our guests or for Jen from our Lansing team today. We'll answer as many as we can during the broadcast, and helpful links will be shared throughout the show to accompany the topics we discuss. Let's get into our guests, though. Joining me today to share more about Holland's story, we've got City Manager Keith Van Beek, and we have Mayor Nathan Bocks. Thank you so much for joining us. And I say joining us, we're really joining you here in your council chambers. Um, to start us off, Mayor, what makes Holland unique, and what's the story you'd want to share with other local leaders?
Absolutely. We are a community of planners. We have a decades-long history of people who have thoughtfully planned for our downtown area and frankly for development in this community that goes back more than a generation. We had in the 1980s a downtown that was suffering like a lot of downtowns did. And we had visionary people who looked at a way to be able to revitalize that downtown area in a vision that has carried on right into today. We have the largest snowmelt system in North America. Actually have over a mile of heated streets in the downtown area and 5 miles of heated sidewalks in a vision that has developed itself into what we refer to as Window on the Waterfront, which is a whole series of projects that puts us right into a system that we like to refer to as public investment in infrastructure that leads to private development in the community as well. And I'm teeing that up for our city manager because this is one of the things that we think is really, really important to be able to make a community like Holland, Michigan thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. Keith, what do you have to add there?
Yeah, so much. First of all, thanks for coming to Holland.
Oh,
Ooh,
what a delightful drive today in the
Yeah,
beautiful downtown. And we've been here before, of course. We had our convention here a couple of years ago, and that was unique because we hosted that in a decentralized format. So we were a little bit of everywhere, which really gave us an opportunity to see what Holland is known for and get to experience it as locals do. So we love being able to come back and come home a little bit
yeah.
since we got so used to it for that week we were here.
It was kind of the walkable format, right?
Yeah.
Decentralized. And a lot of times here in Holland, we talk about, and no one's ever 100% convinced on anything, right? So it's
Sure.
like, well, I still want to be able to pull up and park right in front of the store. And we always talk about, well, this is the place where you should want to walk.
Yes, and I think that is what was so unique. We haven't had anything like that, quite like that since, that
Yeah.
we were able to walk between locations, hotel locations, event locations, and really experience all of the walkability that Holland has to offer.
And I hope that a lot of the listeners out there are somewhat at least familiar with our downtown and our city. And if not, come visit us. But yeah, the mayor kind of set it up for me perfectly where we have a decades long, um, story to tell of public-private partnership,
Right.
right? Which I think is really critical. And it's not just on the planning side, but it's certainly then on the investment side. So we could tell lots of stories about the companies and the individuals and the families that invested in that on the private side. And it certainly fits the talking point of MML forever about
Sure.
placemaking,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Before
And the
placemaking
roles.
even was a term that was used.
Exactly. So we still talk about that all the time. I think the part that I'll highlight is now that we are a little bit further along in our journey, we're still doing it. We still plan. We still talk about new investment. We still talk about Private investment sometimes demands public investment, but it can work the other way too,
Sure.
where we've done public investment along our 6th Street corridor, which is for listeners, 2 streets north of our main 8th Street corridor.
Sure.
And we think now that public investment is going to spur private investment.
Right.
But really what we've done is, and what I can talk about, is just the planning that we've done on the capital side of things.
Right.
Because you can't just all of a sudden say, oh, we want to do this placemaking thing and like, let's find the money for it, right?
Right.
And then
Couch cushion it.
Yeah, like that doesn't work really well.
No.
And it's not just the capital side of things, but it's the ongoing operating perspective. And then it's eventually the replacement cost.
Right.
So huge compliments to our finance team here in the city, and also kind of our other departments that are responsible for those infrastructure investments, where we have a 50-year capital improvement plan where basically we've just charted out everything that we're responsible for in the public space and planned that out. Like what's the life cycle of that investment? What do we think the future replacement cost would be? And we've just played that out in time. And then we've also done it now more intensively on our, revenue side of things.
Mhm.
So just having very intense, quite frankly, capital investment plans, but also revenue forecasts to make sure that we're never taking bites out of things that 2, 3, 10, 20 years down the line, we're not going to be able to afford.
Right. And if there are other communities out there who are saying, wow, 50 years, that's quite a period of time. How do I set up my community in a similar position? What advice would you have for them?
Start small. And we didn't get to that in
Sure.
one
Overnight.
month
Yeah.
or 1 year even,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But I think it makes sense, right? That you should have in one place, probably a complicated pivot table or something, but
Sure.
come on, we know Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah.
You should have everything that you have a responsibility for that at some point you're going to have to do preventive maintenance on, or a little bit larger than preventive maintenance on, or
Sure.
replace, and chart that out over a long period of time. So, then from a capital improvement plan perspective, you have bigger years than others sometimes.
Sure.
So just start somewhere and start building that out.
And have you seen that impact sort of how you approach your annual budget season? And if so, what change or differences have you seen?
I'm going to actually flip that back to the mayor because he
Yeah.
talks about this all the time. He does a great job leading, and he talks about what that staff work does for the decision makers.
Right.
Absolutely. That 50-year municipal capital improvement plan, together with, we have a 10 and sometimes even a 15 and 20-year municipal funding projection as well that staff has been able to put together for us, really helps us as the decision.
So valuable, right?
Absolutely, because otherwise we're making decisions in the dark.
Right.
We know now as city council members what we are responsible for at a base level.
Mhm.
And we know where the money is going to be coming from. We know what money is going to be going out. And then that helps us when we want to look at the possibility of a larger capital project, whether that's something we're going to be able to afford in the future, not only, as Keith said, to be able to afford to build it in the first
Right
place,
now, sure.
right now, or be able to maintain it in the future,
Yeah.
and be able to replace that in the future. It is crazy to me to think that there are communities out there that don't have this kind of plan in place. And how in the world can you possibly make decisions
Mhm.
if you don't know those things in advance? And as Keith said, I think the first thing that you have to do is you have to know what it is that you have. You have to do that inventory of every single thing that you have. I remember before I was mayor hearing that the city was doing an inventory of every piece of real estate that it owned in the city. And I
Mhm.
thought, how is it possible that a city doesn't know what every piece of real estate that it owns in? But as a city, we owned all these little slivers of property,
Sure.
and little right-of-way spaces. And looked at those as what is our responsibility for those? What ones don't we need anymore? What ones can we do something with? And using all of that to build into this larger plan that we have. And we started with a municipal capital improvement plan that wasn't funded at first. We looked at paying for that with leftover money at the end of the budget year. And we have over time now not only have that plan, but we look at making sure that that's funded every single year, which again, as a decision maker, makes it so much easier for us.
Yeah, and I got to give a shout out to all finance staff out there because I'm sure here in Holland that was not necessarily an easy lift
Mm-mm.
to move into this sort of new vision for how you approach it. But really, the finance teams from all of our communities are doing a lot of work in supporting elected officials and, of course, staff too in making those decisions. But I want to talk a little bit more about a specific investment the community is making here, and that is the ice skating park. So, Mayor, tell us a little bit about that new development.
Absolutely. That's part of the investment that Keith was talking about on Sixth
Right.
Street, just
Yeah.
off of our downtown area. Holland has always been a 3-season community. It's been great to come here in springtime for tulip time. It's wonderful in the summertime for our beaches. Autumn is a great time here. But frankly, February in Holland, Michigan has not necessarily been the greatest time of year to be able to come here. And we've always been looking for some winter activities. And we had a gentleman by the name of Frank Cry. He was a retired school teacher who for about a decade had been coming into City Hall and had been saying, hey, if you ever build an ice skating rink, I would love to be able to contribute to that. And so he'd been contributing $1,000, $2,000 a year up to the point where he'd given about $25,000 over the course of a decade or so. And then in his mid 80s, he sat down with his financial advisor, and his financial advisor said to him, Frank, you're a millionaire. And Frank said, I can't be a millionaire. I'm a retired school teacher. A retired school teacher can't be a millionaire. They said, no, Frank, you've invested well and you've lived pretty well. And Frank decided he didn't need all of that money. And so he came into City Hall and he said, Mayor, if you and the team at the City of Holland start building an ice skating rink before I pass away, I will give the city another $1 million.
Wow.
And so I talked to Keith and we talked to the team, and it took us about 3 seconds to make that decision.
Yes.
Exactly. And so we put out a call to the community, and the community rallied around almost immediately after that notice went out. I got a call from another family in the community who said, we want to give $1 less than Frank gives because we want to make sure that Frank is the lead donor.
Yeah.
And we now we're getting very close to the ribbon cutting for an ice skating rink. Keith, project is a $11.5 million project.
Wow.
Of that $11.5 million, about $9.5 million came either from private donations or ARPA dollars. And I think that we could have built a really good $9.5 million ice skating park. But City Council said, we want to make sure that the residents of the City of Holland, the taxpayers, have some skin in the game as well. And so we've got this amazing ice park. It not only has a pond of ice that is chilled ice, but it has a ribbon of ice, just like the canals in the Netherlands. Frank said that he wanted curling, so we have a curling rink. Frank said that he wanted hot chocolate, so we have hot chocolate. Frank said that he wanted ice skating rink or ice skating rental or ice skate rental, so we've got skate rental. We went to the local college, Hope College, and looked for a donation, and the student activities committee said, you know what, we'd like to invest some money, but you know what we'd really like to do? We would like to do ice skating lessons for the local elementary students. So we're going to be having college students doing ice skating lessons with the elementary students. Nothing warms a mayor's heart more than knowing that the college students in your community are going to be interacting with the elementary students in your community. It's 2 blocks off of our downtown. We're lighting it in a way that you're going to be you'll be able to sit at the heated fireplace right in the hub of our restaurant community downtown and be able to see the glowing lights of the ice skating rink drawing you down into that area right where we have invested another $9 million in infrastructure on 6th Street, most of which, due to Keith and his finance department, was reimbursed with brownfield redevelopment funds. So I get to say to the taxpayers of the City of Holland, you have $20 million of investment in your downtown area that cost you as taxpayers $2 million. It's an
Incredible.
incredible story for me.
And incredible story of Frank, that's
One retired school teacher.
a citizen that is just a shining star for,
Yeah.
I'm sure, many others. That's
we refer
really
to-
inspiring.
We refer to him as an extraordinary, ordinary
Yes.
citizen here in the city of Holland.
Yes, how amazing. Well, the other thing that's amazing about Holland that I appreciate and have heard about for the last few years is the Holland City Fiber. That has been huge in the news. So, Keith, walk us through what that is for maybe some of our folks who are joining us who haven't heard of it. I don't know how they haven't heard of it yet, but maybe that's because I'm a local government nerd and I like to hear about all these new developments. And I'm sure we'll have some follow-up questions for you on how all of that came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very lucky to have a partnership, and I call it a partnership. The Holland Board of Public Works, the HBPW, always talks about, acting on behalf of, because technically they are part of the city, but
Yeah.
they have their own governing structure and their ability, and they handle for us water,
Mhm.
sewer, electric, and it's not just the distribution, but they also generate electricity here on the edge of town. When MML came, I think
Yeah.
there were tours of
Yeah.
Holland Energy Park,
Yeah.
very high efficiency natural gas plant that, by the way, that the waste heat from that powers our snowmelt system. So it's very environmentally
Wow.
concerned and sustainable. But we also have had a fiber system.
Mm-hmm.
And that fiber system goes all the way back to support our electric utility. And for the nerds out there, you'll know that was very important because it predates the Metro Act,
Mm-hmm.
which means because it predates the Metro Act, we were able to ultimately ask our citizens to consider a small millage to help in the building of the capital for this entire fiber system at the beginning.
Sure.
But we are now building that out. And in fact, we have just passed the point where more than 50% of our addresses in the city have that system built in front of their location. It is ubiquitous, which means that it's available to everybody in the city. It's not one of those things, right, where it's only in a neighborhood
Regions.
that
Sure.
and
Yeah.
have to pay off.
Right.
And if, oh, that's too rural, no, we're not going to make our money. It's ubiquitous for everybody.
Sure.
And then residents have the choice to connect to it or not. They also have the choice to use their current providers either on the system that they have,
Mm-hmm.
or providers can also do a
Resource.
rate with us.
Mhm.
So it's an open network system, basically. But yeah, right now you'd think the city manager would have been first to get this service. It's not true. I give BPW friends a hard time, but later this month, I am going to be connecting into that BPW. And what that means
Your
is
personal home is
my
connecting into
personal
it.
home is connecting into it. And basically, I'm going to get twice the speed for half the price.
Incredible.
So basically, it's 2 gig for $45 a month.
I don't even think I have that at my own home. So
Yeah.
how incredible is that? When you were approaching the citizens to help fund this, was it rousing support? What were you hearing initially?
Yeah, we got more than 60% in the ballot box.
So a landslide.
This, so
Yes.
we know that's a
Yeah.
landslide, right? And I think it's because of a couple things. One, it's a recognition here locally of appreciation of the Holland Board of Public Works being a great provider of services.
Right,
And we
trust.
provided that, right?
Yeah.
So they know that they get great services from us currently. Their electricity basically never switches off, and it's very responsible and at an appropriate cost. It's a great value investment.
Yeah.
So I think there was a feeling that this also was a value investment. But really what we talked about, Mayor, you can pitch in. Fiber is no longer a nice to have.
Mhm.
It's really a utility in the classic sense of you need to have it.
Right.
And through the pandemic, I think that point was even proven more. Um, and really, it's just what I like to say, it's another competitive advantage that we have now as a community that I think our residents caught the vision for and are
Mm.
very excited. The most common thing I get now walking the streets and in the grocery store is the same
Is it
thing that I
me?
had.
I'm
When is it
me.
me?
Right, right.
Right? So it's been great. We're completely convinced that it will be a good investment and again, a good value for our citizens.
And I will be super interested to see what percentage of citizens end up selecting city services versus their current provider. I think that'll be interesting.
Us too, you
Yeah.
had to do a lot of projections there.
Right.
Ultimately, the pro forma, the financials that we ultimately decided we did it on 50%.
Mm-hmm.
Because we said, well, 50% of the people need to vote for it, and we got
Sure.
60% voted for it. So we think 50% was a conservative and logical
Sure.
adoption rate, is what we
Yes.
say. And yeah, I'm pretty convinced we'll beat that 50% adoption rate.
Yeah, I think so too. It'll be interesting to see how that happens. And really something that makes Holland incredibly unique in the state that you're able to do that. So interesting. Mayor, do you have fiber internet yet? Are you still waiting?
I actually, it's not required in the city of Holland, but I used to live across the street from Keith. For the first 5 years that I was mayor, we lived across the street from one another. I moved into an area that actually has Holland City fiber.
All right.
But my office does not yet. So I have it at home. I don't have it at my office. And because I have commercial internet, I'm at my office, I'm actually going to get 5 times the speed for 1/5 the cost at my
Wow.
commercial thing. But we just had a customer survey done at the BPW. Holland City Fiber has a 96% approval rate
Wow.
in the customer service with Holland BPW. So people love it. My goal for the BPW was that it be as simple and easy for folks to get their internet set up as it is for electricity when you move into place. When you think about getting your electricity set up, you call and it just works.
Yeah.
And we're finding that same thing is happening with internet, which people don't expect is going to happen. They think that it's going to be this really onerous, complicated, difficult process. And I know when I moved in to our new place that had it, I called and the guy showed up and he was there for about 5 minutes and he walked out and I said, "Oh, did you forget something in the truck?" And he said, "No, I'm done." And that
Wow.
was it. And it was all set. And that kind of service from the Holland BPW is what people have come to expect with water, wastewater, and electricity. And now they're getting it with fiber as well. And I think that that's a standard that we can live up to here in the city of Holland.
Yeah, super interesting to hear about it and sort of study it as folks who don't live here too. Well, Keith, you have been connected to us here at the League for quite some time. You served as president of MME a few years ago and in various capacities on the board, et cetera. Talk to us a little bit more about your connection to the League throughout your career before you were here in Holland and now that you've come into this position for obviously you didn't come into Holland yesterday. You've been here for a while,
Yeah.
but you've got a long track record with us. And how has that helped you in your various roles?
Yeah, I think it's critical, Emily. Thanks for not bringing up that time that I spent at counties too. Sometimes you like to give me a hard time
You
about that.
mentioned it, not me. So
I think the league is vitally important. Not only from what I'll call a staff perspective, whether you be a manager, finance director, or whatever role, because there's education capabilities there,
mhm,
right? But then certainly for our elected officials, just a place to um, have education, have networking. I really encourage mayor and council to go to events, not only because you really need to get outside of your own community and your own bubble, if you would, to find out what other communities are doing, to really have a complete appreciation of what it is that you're dealing with.
mhm.
Sometimes maybe have great ideas. Sometimes, we all joke about this, right? Like, who I thought my problems were bad.
It's good to have that
It
perspective.
is.
Yeah.
I mean, and we
Yeah.
joke about it, but it's
But it's
it's
true.
actually true.
Right.
And then I think it can be isolating being just in your community's lot.
Absolutely.
And
you
to
feel like it's
have a
just you.
family that
Yes.
you can go and like, wow, someone really gets me
Yes.
is priceless.
Yeah.
Um, so I am a huge supporter to be involved, to have our our experiences hopefully help you from a lobbying perspective and others,
Yeah.
but also for our crew to get out of our communities sometimes and then even go to conferences and just get to know each other on a level more than just show up for a meeting and then leave too.
Right.
So I think it's priceless.
Yeah. And in these roles, it's important that you have other people you can call when something comes up and you need that perspective or gut check or um, because who better to tell you than your family that, your thinking's a little off or you need to reframe your perspective for sure. Mir, what about you as an elected official, in terms of being a civic leader, what have you found most helpful about the league and Holland's connection to it?
Yeah, Keith is exactly right. There's that education piece. For me, there's been nothing more valuable than talking to other mayors.
Yeah.
Being a mayor sometimes is a lonely thing where there's not another mayor in town for me to be able to talk to and commiserate with and go, oh, good, you get me, you understand, you've got the same kind of issues and same kind of problems and same kind of concerns that I have. But there have also been some very specific issues that the league has stepped up with that have been very helpful for us here in the city that we've been advocates with the league as
Mhm.
well. Short-term rentals is
Yep.
the example that comes right to mind, that we've needed the lobbying efforts of the league to make sure that the legislators have known what those issues are that the local communities have had. And that is really invaluable to be able to have that kind of organizational structure to be able to make sure the voices of the individual communities are heard in Lansing by the legislators.
Yes, and that's why Jen's here with us today, the short-term rental team captain, to get over here in Holland. And you've both served in Holland in complementary roles, of course. And looking back over the years, I'm sure there are a lot of things to be proud of, and we've talked about a lot of those things. But Mary, I want to talk about the number of visitors that Holland has, and I'm sure there's maybe a change, right? Pre-COVID, COVID happens, and now we're sort of back on the uptick. But talk to us a little bit about how that's changed, where the city is at now, and what that might say about the city of Holland.
Yeah, we had a bit of a surprise with the number that we had for Tulip Time this year. For those people who don't know, we had 1 million people come into town. The official number was 976,000 people from a number that came from what's called Placer AI, which
Mhm.
tracks cell phone usage.
Sure.
And I used a little mayoral discretion and said that there are people here without cell phones, and so I'm going to up it to 1 million people. We had been using a number of about 600,000 at Tulip Time and an economic impact number of about $50 million over the 10 days of Tulip Time. Well, if you extrapolate that out and you go, no, now I get 1 million people, I think we're closer to $100 million of economic impact in 10 days from Tulip Time. And you extrapolate that out over the course of the summer and the tourism season, that's an awful lot of
Huge.
economic impact that's coming into this one community of 35,007 people.
Right.
And that spreads out over a larger regional area. But that's something to really be proud of in this community. And for this community to be able to absorb that, the infrastructure to be able to absorb that, and frankly, our teams to be able to absorb that. Our Parks and Recreation Department does an awful lot of the operational work that goes on with Tulip Time. Now, Tulip Time itself is run by a separate nonprofit organization. They organize the festival. They do all of the events related to the festival, but they contract with the City of Holland to do
Mhm.
the operations. City of Holland purchases the bulbs and plants the bulbs that are there. But we take care of the garbage. We take care of all of the fencing and the gating and making sure that things run really smoothly behind the scenes. Our folks are out there 24/7.
Mhm.
I'm an early morning walker. I'm sometimes out downtown at 4:30 in the morning. Our folks are out there every single morning. And when the festival is done, we've got to flip the downtown in 24
Right away.
hours
Yeah.
to be ready for our farmers market.
Right.
And 2 days later for the Chamber of Commerce Community Impact Day, which has dozens of volunteer projects with hundreds of volunteers. And a few days later for the Memorial Day celebration that's taking place, and making sure that our Pilgrim Home Cemetery looks as best as it can for that celebration. Because believe me, families of veterans want to make sure that that cemetery looks really good.
Absolutely.
Month of May for our Parks Department is an incredibly busy month. And to host 1 million people is an amazing thing for the community, but for our staff to be able to absorb all of that and make sure that that runs smoothly for this community, the community doesn't realize all of that stuff that goes on because it's done so well.
Right. It's so seamless that we don't even notice it. That's incredible. And I loved hearing about your public works team who do a lot, of course, behind the scenes. You have a greenhouse, which I can't wait to take a peek at later.
Fabulous.
And really interesting stories surrounding tulip time and how that interacts with the city itself. Another thing that I guess you could brag about are the public safety updates that have been coming into place, changes, et cetera, to the parade, barricades, those types of things. So, Mayor, talk to us a little bit about those updates as well.
Yeah, we have 2 parades that take place during the Tulip Time Festival. One on Thursday and one on Saturday. The Saturday parade used to be 2 miles long.
Okay.
We had to shorten it by a full mile this year after some events that happened in New Orleans. Tragic event that happened there where somebody drove out onto the parade route, and we looked with Tulip Time at what could be done to secure that route, and we said there were just too many opportunities along that route for people to be able to get onto that route, and we said we simply couldn't do it, and so we decided we had to shorten that route by a full mile, which a lot of the folks that lived along that mile of the parade route
Tough.
were not happy
Tough.
about that.
Sure.
We added 140 cement barricades in the downtown area. We have always had tight security measures that people see, measures that people do not see.
Sure.
I like to think that the downtown Holland during a parade at Tulip Time is one of the safest places you can possibly be. But we were able to pull it off, and frankly, our downtown merchants, I think, to a merchant, thought it was a great idea. There was a little bit of friction with the people of the city of Holland initially, but I think most of them really understood that needed to happen. And I cannot say enough about our Department of Public Safety, our fire folks, our police folks were out there. And frankly, I think that just about every single vehicle that the city of Holland has is used during those parade days to block every single intersection, every single access point that's there. And as I said, those barricades were moved in place on Tuesday night before the Wednesday parade, and they were gone by 6 o'clock on Sunday morning that day. And I know Keith
Impressive.
knows way more about that
Yeah.
than I do about all of those things that happened that day. But it was incredible to me to be able to see the level of security that I knew about, and additional things that I found out about even on parade day. And I know that there are things that even I didn't know about that was going on.
Yeah, it reminds me this this story with the public safety and also talking about your public works department. This is going to sound maybe a little silly, but it almost reminds me of Disney World, where you show up and it looks amazing and you have an incredible time. And meanwhile, all of these people there's so many inner workings that the people that get to come and experience have no idea that are happening in the background. And I think that's a real testament to your staff here and your team and the amount that you all put intentionally into all of those things.
Yeah. As a guy who wears silver-plated wooden shoes at the front of the parade, I said to our police chief as we were doing a briefing about the security, I said,
Yeah.
Chief, the only reason I'm able to sleep at night is because I know that you don't.
Yeah.
They are dedicated to making sure that every resident, every visitor is safe. They are looking at every single thing that could happen possibly to make sure that we're all safe, so that the residents can have a good time, our visitors can have a good time, and those 1 million people that are coming to visit the city of Holland can be assured that they're going to be able to come here, be safe, and enjoy the beauty of Holland, Michigan during Tulip Time.
Right. Super, super inspiring, and also speaks to, I think, the nobility of public service that all of us that our members of the league or work at the league really feel about local government. I want to talk about, moving into the future. What challenges or things are on the horizon in terms of all of these things, right? Continuing to sustain these infrastructure and service investments. How are you navigating what that looks like, Keith?
Yeah, thank you. I think it really goes back to some of the things that we talked about where you have this long-term financial plan and you're
Yeah.
always taking a look at, and MML is such a great partner because once you think you have something figured out, oh, we can rely on this source of revenue and then something changes, right?
Yeah.
That's why we need the revenue sharing trust fund.
Thank
That
you
would
very
make your
much.
projections.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And really, it's in that long-term financial forecast. A lot of times it's like, okay, this is the way that it looks, but then we have question marks, right? And then you identify those, and then you can be a little bit more intentional and strategic in going after those question marks. So some of it is like lead service lines, right? My
Yeah.
friends out there,
Yeah.
or we're taking a look at how Headley and Proposal A interacts,
Sure.
where that is absolutely top of our list right now because
Right.
we're at the point where our charter maximum is 17.5 mils. We have never levied that amount here in the city. We're at 13.8 mils and change for all of our things put together.
Sure.
But that Headley reduction year after year after year for decades now, right, is now we're over 14, but not that much over 14. So we need to take care of that question mark.
Yeah.
And really right now, the only way is to go back to the voters of doing that
Sure.
to make sure our 14 and dropping doesn't match our 13.8. So we need to take care of that ahead of time. So yeah, we all have challenges, we all have issues, but I think that's where you have good systems and process and leaders in place.
Sure.
Then you try to stay ahead of those as much as possible.
Right. Mayor Bocks, anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. As Keith said, we've never levied the 17.5. Matter of fact, we
Right.
have not raised our millage rate for 14 years in the city of Holland. And that's because of really good planning,
Sure.
which as a leader and a decision maker, I think that means this is a really good time for us to go back to the voters and say,
Yeah.
listen, there is not a single member of the Holland City Council that has ever increased the tax rate here in the city of Holland. I think that you can trust us when we say we've been good stewards with your tax dollars. And we're not asking to raise your taxes. What we're asking is the ability to maintain local control and local decision-making and not have some artificial formula end up being the thing that makes the decisions on what we're able to do or not be able to do
Sure.
here in the city of Holland. And let us have that breathing room in case something happens in the future. Or my goodness, I do not want to be in a position where we have to go to the voters and say, we're not able to do the things that we would like to be able to do because that cap is now lower than what we've been historically been able to do in the city of Holland. And so I think that while that's a difficult question always to be able to go to the
Sure.
voters and say,
Absolutely.
hey, give us the ability to be able to raise your taxes.
Yeah.
But I think that the voters in the city of Holland, even in historically conservative Western Michigan, are going to be really interested in maintaining local control of their own tax dollars and their own future.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks to the trust that they have in leaders such as yourselves who take such care to come up with that 50-year plan and to be really thoughtful about the decisions that you're making and the investments you're making into the future. Well, thank you so much, Mayor Bocks. Keith, this has been a great conversation. I want to shift us quick to what's going on in the advocacy realm because we do have a few updates. Of course, I'm joined by Jen Rigtrink of our state and federal affairs team. Jen, welcome.
Thanks, Emily.
Let's start with a recap of last week's Mackinac Policy Conference. What were some of the big takeaways from a league perspective?
It does seem like it was last week, but it was 2 weeks ago.
Oh, sorry, 2
No,
weeks
you're
ago.
good. You're good. And
I also was on vacation,
need-
so that
that is
does.
true. But you usually need a week just to try to play catch up from
Right.
dealing with that. Actually, our time on the island was well spent. We had a number of meetings with legislators. We had meetings with members of ours that were up
Yeah.
on the island, as well as the league hosts a reception every year. And we just heard great comments about the reception, just even in the last week about it was one of the places where you saw legislators from both sides of the aisles interacting.
Mhm.
And we also had a number of people saying, you need to get a bigger space. You need to get a bigger space next year.
That's a good problem to have, I think.
Yes, I
Yeah.
don't think we'll get a bigger
Yeah.
space, but it also, there was a good flow of people in
Right.
and out. And so, the topics we talked about the revenue sharing trust fund, we talked about housing and roads. So a number of things, making sure that we are, talking to those folks outside of the bubble of Lansing,
Yeah.
and continuing to have those conversations. So it was a very productive trip for the team.
Excellent. Excellent. And you're fully recovered by now.
Oh, yeah.
We also know that the state budget is a hot topic right now, of course. What is
Yeah.
the latest and what does it mean for our local governments?
Yeah, so I know the team has talked about this the last couple of shows, but the latest updates, Senate has passed their bills.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of last week, the House introduced all of their different budget bills. And so what we anticipate is this week they'll be going through, actually getting those bills filled out,
Sure.
and then they will pass them through the House. And then that's when the real negotiations
Mm-hmm.
will happen with the governor's office, the state budget office, as well as the leaders of both chambers. So we are still at a wait and see. We need to get when the House gets theirs done. But we'll see if they hit the July
Yeah.
1st deadline, which July 1st is a statutory deadline, but there's no actual repercussions if they don't hit that.
Right.
The real deal comes October 1st. And if there's not a budget, then state government would shut down. We're not anticipating that it gets to that. Could it? Of course it could. We're not anticipating that it will. But those are things we'll be watching closely and sharing updates with the membership as things
Sure.
change.
Continue to progress. A
Mhm.
topic that the gift that keeps on giving, the budget. All right. Also, a proposed change to the Open Meetings Act regarding closed sessions. What's the status of that bill? What should folks know?
Yeah, so this is a reentry of a bill from last year that we supported. It's Senate Bill 288, and it is just clarifying when a public body can go into closed session to discuss litigation, even potential litigation. And so that's something we testified on in support of last week, and it was voted out of the Senate Local Government Committee and now sits on the Senate floor awaiting action. I think it's one of those bills that just got caught up in lame duck,
Sure.
and like a lot of things did
Yeah.
last year. So, but we worked with the Michigan Association of Municipal Attorneys, their legislative committee. I have to give a shout out to retired Kalamazoo City Attorney Clyde Robinson, helped a lot with
Yes.
crafting and finessing some of the language in that bill to make sure it was doing what we were asking for it to do. So, and it's sponsored by Senator Kleinfeld, and who served on, in a public body setting. And so this is very specific to the public body she sat on in an issue that came up, and they were
Right.
not able to do something when they thought they should, but it's because it's not clearly stated about what you can do in the closed session for that particular matter. That's where this kind of evolved from.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting backstory. Thanks for that update. All right. Well, before we let you go, Jen, and close us out, anything else to add?
Yeah. So we would like to thank you again for hosting us. And we do have this small gift of appreciation of on the road. So a little thing for you to have here at City Hall. So I'll
Excellent.
provide that to
Great.
you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Fabulous.
What a delight it has been. I wish we should post pictures of these on our social media so our folks can see what they look like. But what a delight it's been here to hear about the city of Holland. Like I said, it sort of feels like coming back home because we spent so much time here for convention a few years ago and really got to know the community and experience it like residents would. And so seeing that vision for long-term planning, the public engagement, the vibrancy of the community and its residents is really something I think all of our members can learn a little bit from and be inspired by, which is, I think, something we're all looking for these days. A couple of quick reminders before we close. These are important. We're going to post some links in the chat here. Applications open June 13th for our Women's Elected Leadership Intensive. That is a 6-session leadership and development program for women in local government in elected offices. Spots are limited, so you'll want to apply to that early. We will post some info in the chat about that. And in addition to that, our annual convention is happening September 17th through 19th in Grand Rapids. Registration opens later this month, so make sure you visit convention.mml.org for more information, and we hope to see you there. That wraps up this special edition of Live with the League here in Holland. We can't wait to go to lunch after this and explore a little bit more of the downtown. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. We will see you for our next show on Monday, June 23rd. Have a great week.